Why did the PM block the release of the security dossier on Russian interference? What did he want us not to know about Russian funding and Russian connections with the Conservative Party and him? Well, reports now say it's because he personally was concerned about naming certain oligarchs, Russian oligarchs, who had funded the Conservative Party. On Byline Times, we've covered the wild parties which Boris Johnson went to in Evgeny Lebedev's house in Perugia in Italy. Evgeny Lebedev is the son of a former KGB spy who now owns The Independent and has wild parties. And I've spoken to people who have been at these great fun wild parties he throws. And Boris Johnson has been to more than one. He was found spotted in the airport, completely drunk, without his security detail, after one of these wild parties. Now, who knows what he's done? Does he even know what he's done? But you have that fear that you could have done something compromising. You do not want to challenge these people. The worst thing about withholding this report is it shows compliance. It shows that people are scared to take on Putin. This hidden report would be partly about Russian funding of the Conservative Party, but also, and this threatens Boris Johnson, because he led the Vote Leave campaign, about Russian interference in Brexit. The ridiculous thing about this is the kind of disinformation that flows around, the kind of wrong emphasis. Newsnight ran a famous sequence with Corbyn outside the Kremlin with a Russian hat on, implying he's a kind of Russian agent, while at the same time, we know, maybe Newsnight didn't, the major infiltration of the Russians was on UKIP and the Conservative Party. There's an oligarch close to Boris called Timerko, who apparently, he says, was plotting with Boris, while he was Foreign Secretary, how to get rid of Theresa May. Dominic Cummings, who's now head of staff, spent 3 years in Russia in the late 90s during those Wild West times. And he hasn't really accounted for that. He says this airline he worked for was closed down by the KGB. It wasn't. Open Democracy have estimated the Conservative reliance on Russian donors has actually increased in the last year. We have these rich individuals capturing politics. The greatest threat to democracy is oligarchy, where you buy democracy with data operations or investment in politicians. Politicians are paid very little compared to oligarchs. London has more billionaires than any other city in the world, and somebody like Boris Johnson, who calls £250,000 a year for writing an occasional column chicken feed, is obviously comparing himself with oligarchs who have multiple yachts and private jets. He feels poor in comparison to them. There was definitely, from the Russian point of view, in 2012, 13, the stepping up of a spy operation on the British right-wing parties. Now, Sergei Nalobin, he came to London in 2010, around 2011, started up this thing called the Digital Barbecue in the Russian embassy. Lots of social media people went to that. The next thing Nalobin did was to help set up in the grounds of the Russian embassy Conservative Friends of Russia group. Conservative Friends of Russia group was basically a pressure group, well-funded, which included a lot of senior conservatives. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with the mixing with Russians? Well, certainly something wrong with Conservative Friends of Russia, because it shut down the doubts, and Nalobin he denies being expelled, but it's pretty obvious he was forced out of the country because of his activities around the Conservative Party. You go to a Russian party. I was invited to the Russian embassy about 2 years ago, and I was thinking, oh, thank God I forgot. What would happen? What would you do? Would your phone be hacked? Would you engage in some inappropriate behavior? So the thing is, the one duty of electoral law, and the one duty, I think, of our government is to protect us from hostile interference. The fact that Boris Johnson is protecting himself rather than us is deeply worrying. We are vulnerable, just like we were in 2016. That has been documented. How can you have a democracy when people from outside that democracy are actually influencing the vote in a dark way? They're paying for things to happen, and yet they're not accountable in the country for which they're intervening. Democracy only works if there's some kind of accountability and transparency. The danger is, with a new government, that report could be hidden forever. Anybody's seen the great drama Chernobyl ends with this line: the truth is always out there waiting, and it will come out. It will come out. Probably worse will come out than that. But one of the key ways of making sure you see it is to make sure there is not a Conservative majority in the forthcoming general election. A lot of people just don't know these stories. Information is not only power, it's the lifeblood of democracy. Journalism and media is a key battleground, so I would recommend you support Double Down on Patreon. They don't take any adverts, they don't have any outside money, it's just you. So join the future of journalism and join Double Down News on Patreon.